Guys? Welcome back. This is the first stream in a long time, but Overwatch League Season 3 is going to be here soon, so got to get everything ready to go. Got a totally new setup, new PC. My new mic is not set up quite yet, but everything else is good and ready to go, so hopefully no frame drops, anything like that. We got a real webcam now, etc., etc. So also working on editing software as well. So as the season goes on, look forward to some upgrades to videos and other things like that. So what I want to talk about now is power rankings. And I've said this since I think season one. Power rankings are always kind of dumb, in my opinion. It's very hard to gauge some teams, and of course the meta can and will change. So there's a lot going on, and this is not where I think the final standings will be per se. This is going into the year, how I feel about teams, taking into account their organizational structure, their level of talent, their level of chemistry, cohesion, experience playing together, how I think the mental toughness of the team is, especially now that everyone's going to be on the road. That is an extra component added in, and to go along with the organizational structure, the coaching, everything like that. If I do, I think that they'll be able to make good moves in season. Mid-season acquisitions can be extremely important. So, is it a team that if they get out to a bad start, they can bounce back? So this is my just general hierarchy going into the year. Of course, we'll see how the standings shake out. It's going to be very interesting at the start, especially since we have matches in China being canceled. Well, technically they're not canceled because they're getting played elsewhere with the coronavirus and all of that happening. So it's going to be a very interesting season. A lot of people are saying this is a make or break year for the Overwatch League. And I don't really disagree with that. I think it's a very important year. We had a lot of players and personnel, talent for the desk retire. So we're going to see how this goes. I think it's going to be a great year. I'm excited. So we're going to jump into power rankings. Now, I don't want this video to be mega long. So we're going to break them into sections, 4 teams per video, 5 videos. They'll be cranking out before the season starts on the 8th, so look forward to those. So we'll do 17, 18, 19, 20 today, and then we'll work down. If you're watching the stream, then just look for, you know, video breaks that I'll do. But otherwise, yeah, we're going to jump right in to it. So, number 20, we got an OG Season 1 team. It's the Boston Uprising. So, Boston was the worst team in the league for stages 3 and 4 last year. They were not able to do anything. They did have some success early on. Guys like newcomers like Color Hex, one of the big ones was Fusion on the main tank role, coming in being a great in-game leader. They did make the stage 1 playoffs, and then it all went downhill pretty drastically. So if we're looking at returners, we got Fusions, Color Hex, Axion, and that's pretty much it. New off tank coming in. They no longer have RCK or Note. They traded Note mid-season for RCK, of course, and then opted not to bring him back in the off-season. So they're going to most likely have Muffin in on the off-tank role. So in terms of talent, I think this is probably the second least talented team in the league. These guys can make plays. Obviously, it's Overwatch League. All of these guys can play. But when I'm just looking at all of them, they just don't match up. This is, in my opinion, just a tier below the others. They picked up a couple of people from their contenders team when you look at Swimmer and Muffin. So you also have Munchkin returning after having some experience in OWL before. So this is a team that is going to have a bit of experience. I think they'll have decent cohesion, but I don't love their talent level. I think that their organizational goals are still pretty much, buy cheap. kind of develop and then move on after that. So I don't love that structure. I never have. So I don't have a ton of faith in this team. And when I look at them, especially with a couple of the other teams in the bottom, which I'll get to shortly, I just I don't like them as much as the others. I think when push comes to shove, when you need that one person on your team to get a couple of kills to swing a fight, I don't think they have that long term. So I'm gonna put them at 20. Again, they could pull a Boston. They've been picked to be terrible both years. Obviously, the first year they did really well. Second season, not as much, but they did get out to a good start. So you never really know with Boston, but when I'm looking at rosters, theirs is definitely the weakest for me. So after Boston, we go to 19. This is the other team that I thought was very close, at least talent wise to them. We got the LA Valiant. So the Valiant, their entire roster from like seasons one, from two and one, it's gone. Their core is out of here. So you look at KSF, he was there last year, but he was not season one. And then it's the same thing with Shax. They picked him up last season, so it's the core is gone. When you talk about guys like Space, Fate, Custa, Unko, Soon, these guys either moved on to different teams. In Custa's case, he retired and is now moving to an analyst role. So it's going to be very interesting to see this new look Valiant. KSF was a very good performer last season. I think he didn't have the greatest start, especially in Goats meta, but he really kind of came into his own the latter half of the year and played really well. It did get him on to Team USA, so he's a very good player. Shax I thought was solid as well, even though I think his hero pool isn't going to be as useful this season, which could cause some problems. You also have Apply coming in for a projectile play. If we ever see a Pharah meta, look for him to excel in that. But I don't really see a Pharah meta incoming. I think situationally on certain control points she can be decent, but I don't think she's going to have a super high playtime. So when you look at the supports, I like Lastro a lot. He's had a good amount of success in contenders over the years. But when you stack him up against all of the phenomenal, just absolutely incredible off supports, your Ana and Zens for the most part, he just doesn't quite stack up for me, even though I do think he'll have a solid year. Same thing with Rain. We didn't get to see him much last year on Florida. And then when you talk about their tank line, you have the combination of Gig, Dreamer, and McGravy. I would guess we're going to see Gig and McGravy mostly as the starting duo, but we'll see. Gig has had some success in contenders, especially in the GOATS meta. So we'll see how he performs. I think if we get a Reinhardt meta, he'll be very solid. He's very, very good at Reinhardt. If we see more Winston, I think he could get into a little bit of trouble there. And McGravy, again, solid player. I just don't, besides KSF, I don't see the carries on this team. There's a lot of the teams, especially when you get to the upper tier, they have 3-4 guys who can just absolutely carry a match on any given day. I think Valiant are filled with solid players. They just don't really have that game-breaking talent that can just win you matches. Because sometimes it's about your game planning, sometimes it's about the coaching, and you just break down another team on that level. Sometimes it's just raw being just better than them, having more raw mechanical skill. So I don't see this Valiant team being able to do that to a lot of other teams. So they're sitting at 19 for me. Then we go on to 18. You can see I have the magical clipboard of knowledge. I was shuffling some teams. I had to think about it. A lot of them at the top and the bottom were pretty clear for me, but then I had to really break it down and be like, well, no, this team, they grabbed them. It's like, oh, actually, I like this team a little more than I thought, or I don't like this team as much. So we have a team that is a little vexing for me. At number 18, I'm going with London Spitfire. So a lot of turnover in this team. Of course, they are the grand champions from season one. Um, but if you look at their team, they just don't have anyone left from season one. Um, Guys, Gesture, Fury, Prophet, Birdring, Dosen, they're all gone. And do I think that the players they brought in are can live up to those names? I just don't. Um, Guys like Fuse, Shui, most of pretty much all of these guys were pretty successful in Korean contenders, but this is essentially a fresh team. That they haven't had that experience. If you can see, only one of them has a picture. It's Krillin, who was the backup last year. He barely got any play time. It was Bedosian in there most, like, 99% of the time. So I just don't feel good enough about the talent level on this team. I think their talent is high, but since they're a new team coming in and a lot of the other teams at least have their core that's been in Overwatch League, they've gone to war, they've won a lot of big matches, gone to the playoffs. Even though these guys have been in Korean contenders, it's just not quite the same. And I think that they're probably going to struggle mightily out of the gate, and then maybe we could see them hit their stride later on in the season. But with all of the teams that have retained, like I said, that good core, I just can't put London ahead of some of these other teams, even though I think that if you stack up pure talent and just mechanical skill, I think they're probably more in like the 10 to 15 range. But like I said, coming into the league new, I think that we're going to see some growing pains early on, and that could be very detrimental this season. We saw it with Valiant last year. They got off to that terrible 0-7 start, and even though they played really well, they were probably a top 7 or 8 team for the rest of the season after that. It just didn't matter. They weren't able to bounce back and make the playoffs. They missed it by one spot because of that bad start. So I could see something similar happening with London here. Going on to 17, we got the Paris Eternal. So I feel like Paris did essentially what happened to Florida in season one, where they had their EU core and then they started incorporating those Korean players from contenders that stood out to them, and then they kind of like smushed them together, and they saw what happened. And if you remember, for Florida, it did not work out. They eventually had to transition to that all Korean roster. So I'm a little scared that that could happen with Paris. As you can see, you still got guys like Ben Best, Soon, Cruz, and Gray, but you also brought in a couple of players, especially like Sparkle. They got No Smite as well, from formerly of the Hanzhou Spark. So I don't really see how they incorporate. Sparkle is an incredible talent. If you watched the last couple seasons of Korean Contenders, you know exactly how deadly he is. Mostly he was showcased on the Doomfist, but he does have a solid hero pool, so he's going to be a superstar. Only problem, he's not going to be 18 for a couple of stages, so they're going to be without him for a while. Like I said, you still got guys like Soon and Nico filling in at the DPS, but I don't see this team gelling. The main thing for this one, like I said, it's the team chemistry, the cohesion. They're going to be traveling. They're going to be flying all over the place together. Will they coalesce early on? I don't see it happening. They still have a couple of very talented players on this team, but they didn't have a bunch of success last year, and they're going to be. I would assume they're going to mostly use their same core at the start of the year, and I just don't see that stacking up very favorably against the rest of the teams. So I went through these pretty quick. I didn't want to go in super. I didn't want to do a deep dive into each team because, like I said, these are just power rankings. This is just my general sense of the teams, and from like looking at their off-season moves and what I've seen from the last two seasons. So let me know what you think. Like I said, we'll be doing 4, 4, 4, 4. Get all of them out before the 8th. So it really snuck up on me, the start of OWL this year. Let me know what you guys think about the rankings. You think I'm missing anyone in particular? You think any of these teams are going to be very good? Or do you agree? So, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, look forward to a lot more content coming out this season of OWL. Hope you guys have a fantastic couple of days. I'll see you in the next one.